The dome smelled like crushed ozone and alien sweat. Myrex Toll's olfactory antennae flared wide, pulling the chemical signature apart layer by layer. Ozone from the ionization grid, the mineral bite of recycled air. Beneath that, the sour musk of 36 other cadets who had already been sweating through their prep cycles. He keyed the atmospheric mix into his diagnostic station, his chitinous fingers clicking against the interface. 1.1 G Class 4 Deathworld simulation. Wind shear, unpredictable. His carapace hummed with low-frequency anxiety. This was his third rotation running field diagnostics for Varketh's survival track, and the Verley instructor had not failed a single species in 8 months. 312, Myrex's display read. The number sat on Var's forearm, updated in real time, a rolling ledger of biological insufficiency. The false sun in Zone 9 ceiling flickered. Shadows shifted across the dome's 40 kilometers of sealed biome. Toxic flora lined the ridgeline. Predatory microfauna rustled in the canopy. Somewhere in the undergrowth, a medical drone hovered on standby, programmed to intervene only on life threat. Pain was curriculum. Var arrived. The Verley's 8-foot silhouette eclipsed the light. Matte black exosteel shifted over sinew musculature with a sound like gravel sliding across ceramic. 4 primary eyes locked forward. 2 diagnostic optical ports fed live data to Academy Central, pulsing amber. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. His throat scrambler engaged, and the torn paper voice filled the clearing. 37 cadets, 18 systems, 1 planetary rotation. Myrex smelled the fear pheromone spike. 36 bodies tensed. 36 hands reached for tools, for branches, for anything that might become a weapon. Then Jace Voss stepped out of the tree line. She did not run. She did not gather materials. She walked with her hands in her pockets, legs slightly bent like she was about to start a jog she'd never finish, and stopped beside a resin-darkened branch. She looked at it the way someone might look at a menu they already knew by heart. Myrex's antennae twitched. He logged the preliminary note without thinking. Human cadet displays atypical stillness, possible shock response. Monitor. Var's torn paper voice continued. This is not a trick. You will receive no outside support. This is a survival simulation. Half the class sprinted into the brush. The Trinari vaulted a root cluster. The Cern brothers argued in rapid staccato clicks while tearing vines from the canopy. The Emrith hefted a crystalline-jointed limb, testing its weight. Jace pulled a worn wooden knife from her belt pouch. The handle was dark with decades of palm oil. The blade was no longer than her thumb. She turned it in her fingers, examined the branch, and began to test its flexibility with small, patient bends. Myrex did not log the knife. Too small to register as a weapon, too dull to cut anything that mattered. Begin, Var said. The clearing emptied. Jace stayed. She dragged her chosen limb to a flat boulder, sat down, and started to carve. 3 hours earlier, Myrex had watched her sign in at the Academy's orbital checkpoint above Kethros Prime. The ITA's hollowed asteroid hummed around them, a converted rock that housed the galaxy's premier military training facility. 217 species had passed through its survival track. 94% graduated with tech-dependent profiles. Jace had handed over her kit for inspection. No cybernetics, no enhancements, just a field uniform, a water canteen, and the wooden knife in its leather loop. The inspector, a Trinari with 3 lateral eyes, had laughed, a sound like gravel in a blender. Primitive, the inspector said. Jace had shrugged, something like that. Back in Zone 9, the first failures began. Myrex logged them from his diagnostic station, antennae tracking the chemical signatures of frustration and panic. The Trinari's stone bolter, an elegant compression device that launched fractured rock, splashed grass 20 meters short of its target tree. The Trinari screamed something in her native tongue and hurled the bolter into the brush. The CERN brothers' vine hurler collapsed under its own weight before they could tension it. Their clicking turned to argument, then to shoving. The Emrith's crystalline-jointed mallet missed a practice stump by 3 meters. The recoil sent him spinning. Myrex filed each failure with the detached rhythm of a clerk who had seen this before, 312 times in fact. The survival track was designed to expose limitation. The prohibition of regression, academy doctrine, explicitly discouraged devolution to primitive methods. Survival meant technological improvisation under constraint, not abandonment. Jace carved the bow-belly curve into her branch. She did not look up at the noise. She tested string tension with bark fiber braids, snapping strands and watching the curl. When a strand held, she set it aside. When it broke, she reached for another. The Trinari, Myrex checked his roster, found the name. Kess approached Jace's boulder. Kess's 3 lateral eyes narrowed. "That branch is too thin," Kess said. "It will snap." Jace did not look up. "Ask a deer." Kess's lateral eyes flicked. "What?" "Never mind." Jace kept carving. "It'll hold." Kess stood there for 3 seconds, waiting for elaboration that did not come. Then she clicked in disgust and stalked back to her failed bolter. Myrex logged the exchange. Human cadet possible delirium, reference to unknown fauna, monitor. He did not know what a deer was. Neither did Kess. The dramatic irony was invisible to him, but it was there. The audience knew Jace was referencing Earth's megafauna hunting history, a lineage of bowyers stretching back to the Pleistocene. The aliens thought she was babbling. That was the blind spot. Var's blind spot. BS5 control, the belief that the test contained her, that the simulation's parameters, no tech, organic materials, only 1 rotation, were a ceiling, that the environment was the cage. He never considered that the cage might be her native habitat. By the 6th hour, the plateau had formed. Myrex's station autofilled a running tally. Stone bolter failed, vine hurler failed, crystalline mallet failed, net weave too slow, sling inaccurate, club air. Each failure elevated the drone's mythic status before the drone had even been released. Jace's bow took shape in clipped, methodical beats. Limb selection, string seating, notches carved for tension. She worked with the patience of someone who had done this before, many times, in conditions worse than a simulated Deathworld. Myrex found himself logging less about the failures and more about her. The way her pale hands moved, scarred across the knuckles. The way she paused every few minutes to examine the grain of the wood, turning it to catch the false sun. The way she did not hurry, even when the false sunset began to color the dome's ceiling in bands of orange and violet. She sliced her palm on a glass shard while shaping the arrowhead. Myrex smelled the blood before he saw it. Copper, sharp, human. The subdermal laceration was clean, 4 centimeters straight across the meat of her palm. She did not cry out. She did not stop. She wrapped the wound in a strip of bark, tied it with a fiber braid, and kept working. Myrex noted it in his report. Minor laceration, self-treated, no medical request filed. The wound was the first visible evidence of her restraint. She would not stop for pain. She would not ask for help. She followed the rules, no outside support, more ruthlessly than the instructor intended. The false sunset deepened. Var's torn paper voice cut through the dome speakers. Raptor 7 release in 1 hour. Final preparation window. 36 cadets scrambled. Some tried to repair broken weapons. Some started new ones from scratch, desperate and sloppy. The air filled with the chemical signatures of panic, acrid, sharp, unmistakable to Myrex's antennae. Jace embedded the impact glass point into her arrow shaft. She tested the draw. Her shoulder tendon screamed. Myrex heard it. Not audibly. He saw it in the micro-tremor of her arm, the sudden whitening of her knuckles, the way she held the draw for 3 seconds longer than necessary before releasing. The bowstring snapped forward with a sound like a finger flicked against a cheek. She lowered the bow, examined her palm. The bark wrap had darkened with fresh blood. She did not flinch. She did not medicate. She reached for another strip of bark and rewrapped the wound, tighter this time. Myrex upgraded his note. Human cadet displaying abnormal pain tolerance, possible adrenal override, recommend follow-up. He did not file the recommendation. Something held him back. A sense, still unformed, that the follow-up would not go the way Academy Command expected. Var descended from the observation platform. His 8-foot frame moved with the inevitability of a weather front. He stopped at the edge of the clearing, 4 primary eyes scanning the 36 failed weapons scattered across the grass. Stone, vine, crystal, bone, all insufficient. His diagnostic ports pulsed. The torn paper voice addressed the assembly. 36 weapons, 36 failures. The Raptor 7 evasion drone has a 0% hit rate across 847 cadet attempts from 31 species. The number hung in the air. Myrex had logged it 100 times, but hearing Var speak it aloud gave it weight. 847, 0%, a statistical wall. Jace stood from her boulder. She held the bow at her side, the single arrow loose in her wounded hand. She did not look at Var. She looked at the false sunset, at the wind moving through the canopy, at the ridgeline where the drone would emerge. One attempt remains, Var said. Human cadet, step forward. Jace walked to the center of the clearing. Her stride was the same apologetic gait Myrex had noted at sign-in, the jog that never starts, the step that asked the ground's permission. But her fingers found the bowstring, and the apology stopped. She raised the bow, tested the wind with her wounded hand, palm up, blood-darkened bark wrap catching the last orange light. She planted her feet shoulder-width apart. The Raptor 7 drone dropped from the ceiling hatch. Matte gray, falcon sleek, micro-thruster wings blurring as it stabilized. Its optic array spun, targeting, scanning. It hovered at 20 meters, then began to circle. Jace tracked it, not aiming, tracking. The bow rose, the string drew back. Her shoulders screamed. Her palm bled through the bark wrap, slicking the bow grip. She did not flinch. The drone dipped, spun, began its evasive pattern, zigzag, dive, vertical climb, the same pattern that had outmaneuvered 847 attempts. Jace's arm trembled, the draw held, the wind shifted. She waited. The drone committed to its dive. Release. The arrow hissed through the air. I wish I could tell you it ended there. It didn't. Stay close. The impact made a sound Myrex had no category for, not the crack of stone on metal, not the hiss of energy discharge. A wet, precise punch. The Raptor 7 spasmed. Its micro-thruster wings stuttered, caught, failed. The matte gray body tumbled, beak casing first, and hit the grass with a sound like a dropped cooking pot. Smoke rose from the ruptured sensor array. Myrex's carapace locked. The stillness reflex took him for 2.8 seconds, his biology overriding his training, his chitinous shell rigid as a statue while his mind tried to process the stimulus. When his motor control returned, his fingers were already moving across the diagnostic interface, logging the impossible. Involuntary motor arrest. Cause unprecedented stimulus. Duration 2.8 standard seconds. He filed it, he read it back. He filed it again. Across the clearing, 36 cadets stood frozen in various postures of disbelief. Kess, the Trinari's 3 lateral eyes blinked in unison. The CERN brothers had stopped clicking. The Emrith's crystalline-jointed mallet hung forgotten at his side. Jace lowered the bow. Her arm trembled. Blood dripped from her palm, dark against the grass, tracing a line from the boulder to where she stood. She did not smile. She did not raise the bow in victory. She looked at the smoking drone the way she had looked at the branch, evaluating, already finished with it. Var took half a second longer than normal to move. Then the Verily instructor walked to the crash site. His 8-foot frame cast a shadow over the wreckage. He reached down with his cybernetic fingers, matte black exosteel gleaming in the false sunset, and retrieved the arrow. He turned it in his grip. The shaft was plain wood. The fletching was ridged canopy leaves bound with vine thread. The point was impact glass, irregular, hand-shaped. A weapon made in a day from materials found in a simulated Deathworld. Thousands of years of practice. Var's torn paper voice carried no inflection Myrex could read. Jace wiped her palm against her thigh, leaving a dark smear. Something like that. No grin, no boast. Exhausted, sweat-drenched, dirt-streaked hands raw. She had pulled the shot to the optic, disabling, not destroying the hull, restraint visible in the target selection. The drone was a machine, not sentient, but even machines had optimal kill points, and she had chosen the one that ended the threat without excess. Myrex smelled the blood now, sharp human calm, mixed with ozone from the fried drone circuits. The combination had no precedent in his olfactory memory. Dome C debrief chamber sat at the station's core. Tiered seats rose in a semicircle around a central stage. One ceiling projector. Reputations were cremated or canonized here. Var did not project the usual hit-miss diagram. He stood at center stage and held up the arrow remains. The shaft was cracked from impact. The glass point had shattered. The fletching was already browning. 4 primary eyes scanned the assembled cadets. 2 diagnostic ports pulsed amber. 37 weapons, Var said. 36 failures, 1 impact. Of all recorded attempts, only 1 strike disabled the target. Myrex sat at the logging station, antennae flat with the effort of restraint. He wanted to flare them wide, to pull apart the chemical signatures in the room, to understand what he was smelling. But this was a formal debrief. He kept his posture rigid. The weapon type, Var continued, was a primitive projectile. Material classification, organic. Construction time, 1 planetary rotation. He paused. The torn paper voice filled the silence without filling it. Risk assessment, elevated in low-tech environments. Recommendation, reevaluate human threat profiles in survival contexts. The words landed like stones in still water. Myrex logged them verbatim, his fingers clicking against the interface. Around him, he heard the subtle shifts of 36 bodies adjusting to a new gravity. Kes the Trinari's lateral eyes kept drifting to Jace, seated in the front row, hands folded in her lap, the wounded palm wrapped in fresh bark. Var turned to Jace. You injured yourself during construction. You did not report for medical. You kept pressure on the wound through the trial. Jace shrugged. It wasn't that bad. The medical drone logged subdermal laceration. Foreign material detected. 4 centimeters glass shard embedded. You let this sit for 11 hours. Something like that. Var's diagnostic ports pulsed. Myrex could not tell if the Verily was angry, impressed, or recalibrating. With Var, the 3 states looked identical. The restraint is noted, Var said. Not just physical, procedural. You followed the rules more ruthlessly than the instructor intended. No outside support, no medical intervention, no technological improvisation. You survived with sticks. Jace looked at her hands. We survived with sticks, big difference. The room went quiet. Myrex's antennae twitched. He logged the line. Human cadet distinguishes between tool use and tool dependence. Context unclear. Monitor. The medbay was white and humming. An assistant drone scolded Jace while irrigating the wound. Subdermal laceration. Foreign material detected. Infection risk moderate. You let this sit too long. Jace sat on the examination table, legs swinging slightly, not quite reaching the floor. She did not argue. She accepted the irrigation, the suturing, the injection of broad-spectrum antibiotic. When the drone wrapped her palm in synthetic mesh, she flexed her fingers and nodded. 6 to 8 days limited use, the drone said. 14 days full suspension from drills. Then I'd have learned why it missed, Jace said. The drone's optical sensor flickered, parsing the non sequitur. It gave up and moved to the next patient. Myrex stood in the doorway. He had come to file the follow-up report he had held back in Zone 9. Now he found himself without a form that fit the data. "Cadet Voss," he said. Jace looked up. Her eyes were gray-green, tired, the color of shallow water over stone. "Sergeant Toll. You logged my preliminary notes, the shock response, the possible delirium." Myrex's carapace clicked. "I did." "Were they accurate?" Myrex considered the question. His antennae flared, pulling the room's chemical signature, antiseptic synthetic mesh, the faint copper of Jace's blood still lingering beneath the irrigation. No fear, no anger, just the flat, patient calm he had mistaken for shock. "They were incomplete," he said. Jace nodded, as if this was the answer she expected. "Most first drafts are." She slid off the table. The synthetic mesh caught the light. She walked past him close enough that his olfactory antennae caught her scent: wood smoke, bark resin, the mineral tang of the dome's recycled air. No pheromone spike, no chemical tell, just the smell of someone who had spent a day making something from nothing and had not found it remarkable. Myrex watched her go. His fingers hovered over his interface. He began a new report, one that would not fit in any academy template. 3 days later, the reclassification notice posted. Myrex read it from his quarters, antennae flat with the stillness of someone processing information that rewrites their model of the world. The Academy's tactical database had been updated. Weapon type, primitive projectile. Species of origin, human. Threat assessment, elevated in low-tech, no-tech, and tech-degraded environments. Separate protocols recommended. VAR had submitted the recommendation himself. Primitive weapons, a formal module. Jace Voss, cadet instructional adjunct for manual survival systems. The instructor who had failed 312 species was now rewriting doctrine because of the 313th. Myrex filed the notice. He added a note. Subject demonstrates pain tolerance beyond documented human baseline. Subject demonstrates procedural restraint beyond academy standard. Subject demonstrates teaching capacity implicit in construction method. Weapon built as demonstration, not as exception. Recommend observation continue. He paused. His carapace hummed with the low-frequency anxiety that had become familiar since Zone 9. He added one more line. Subject may be holding back. The Academy archive sat in the station's memorial wing. Decades of war trophies and relics lined the walls: energy weapons, captured hull fragments, ceremonial blades from species that no longer existed. The new installation was small. A glass case, microfilament suspension, a wooden arrow cracked at the shaft, glass point dulled by impact. Beside it, a worn wooden knife, handle dark with decades of palm oil, blade no longer than a thumb. The plaque read, "Made in a day." Myrex stood before it. His antennae twitched at the chemical signature of preservation sealant, neutral, inert, designed to prevent organic decay. The knife and arrow would outlast the drone they had disabled. They would outlast VAR's forearm display, the rolling ledger of failures that had stopped at 312 and would not move again. A shadow fell across the case. Myrex turned. Jace stood beside him, her palm still wrapped in synthetic mesh, the gray-green eyes moving from the knife to the arrow to the plaque. "Your grandfather's," Myrex said. "It was not a question." Jace nodded. He was a park ranger before the uplift, before Earth joined the Academy's registry. "He taught you that the bow chooses the archer." Jace's fingers found the case's edge, not touching, just resting nearby. "Not the other way around." Myrex logged the line mentally. It would not fit in any report. That was the point. The new assignment queue arrived that evening. Jace read it from her quarters, a small compartment in the cadet wing with a narrow cot and a wall mount for equipment. The screen glowed blue. Course Beta 223, Fundamentals of Manual Weaponry, approved. She stored her third bow on the wall mount. She had built it that afternoon from a resin-darkened branch, testing flexibility, carving the belly curve, braiding bark fiber until her palm wound ached through the mesh. She did not fire it. She had never intended to. The bow was the lesson. The arrow was the answer. The act of building was the teaching. She sat on the cot. The synthetic mesh itched. She scratched around it, careful of the sutures. The false sunset through her viewport painted the room in bands of orange and violet, the same colors that had filled Zone 9's dome. A knock at the door. Kes the Trinary stood in the corridor, three lateral eyes avoiding direct contact. "The module starts tomorrow," Kes said. "Primitive weapons, manual survival, I am enrolled." Jace looked at her. "You failed the stone bolter." "I did." "You want to learn sticks." Kes's lateral eyes flicked. "I want to understand why the cage was not a cage." Jace was quiet for a moment. Then she reached for the wall mount, lifted the third bow, and held it out. The wood was plain. The string was bark fiber. The grip was worn smooth by her palm. "Take it," Jace said. "Test the draw, see how your shoulder feels." Kes took the bow. Her three-fingered grip was awkward, uncertain. She drew back 3 inches and released. The string snapped with a sound like a finger flicked against a cheek. "It is too light," Kes said. "It is too new," Jace replied. "The bow chooses the archer. You must let it learn you before you learn it." Kes stared at the wood. Myrex, watching from the corridor intersection, saw something shift in her lateral eyes. Not understanding, not yet, but the first crack in a certainty that had held since the stone bolter failed. He filed it mentally. The teaching had begun. Not in Dome C, not in the archive. In a narrow corridor with a plain bow and an uncertain grip. That night Myrex sat at his diagnostic station. The Zone 9 dome was dark, the false sun extinguished for the station's night cycle. He pulled up the Raptor 7's black box data, the flight recorder from the drone Jace had downed. The evasion pattern was there. Zigzag, dive, vertical climb, the same pattern that had outmaneuvered 847 attempts, the same pattern that had made the drone a statistical wall. He ran the impact frame, the arrow's approach vector, the drone's final microthruster burst, the evasive maneuver that should have worked, that had worked every time before. It had not failed. The arrow had not been faster than the drone. It had not been stronger. It had been patient. It had waited for the commit. It had tracked the pattern and known somehow that the dive was coming. Myrex's antennae flared. He smelled ozone from the fried circuits, still lingering in the black box housing. Mixed with it, faint but present, the ghost of wood smoke and bark resin. He closed the file. He opened a new one. The header read, Human Cadet Voss J. Supplemental Observation Log. He typed the first line. She was holding back. Then he stopped. The words were too small for what he meant. He deleted them. He typed again. The cage was not a cage. He deleted that too. It was Var's blind spot, not his observation. He needed his own words, something that carried the weight of what he had seen without borrowing the instructor's framework. His fingers hovered. The station hummed. Outside, the station's orbit carried it over Kethros Prime's dark side, the gas giant storms visible through the viewport as bands of muted color. He typed one line. Then he saved the file and closed the interface. The line read, Subject builds weapons to teach, not to kill. The Academy has no category for this. The first class of course Beta 223 met in a converted storage bay. No tiered seats. No ceiling projector. Just a concrete floor, a wall mount for bows, and 37 cadets from 18 systems sitting on crates and each other. Jace stood at the front, her palm still wrapped in synthetic mesh, the gray-green eyes scanning the room. She did not have an instructor's posture. She had the posture of someone waiting for a bus that was already late. Manual weaponry, she said, means you build it, means it breaks, means you build it again. Kes sat in the front row, the third bow from Jace's wall mount balanced across her knees. She had not returned it. No one had asked her to. The academy teaches improvisation under constraint, Jace continued. That's fine, but sometimes the constraint is the tool. Sometimes the blackout lasts longer than the battery. A CERN brother raised a clicking hand. Why would a species still train in something so outdated? Jace looked at him. Because environments change, tech breaks, batteries die, systems crash. But a sharpened stick works whether you're on Earth or orbiting a gas giant. She paused. The room was quiet. Myrex, stationed at the doorway with his diagnostic tablet, felt his antennae twitch. The line was familiar. He had heard it before or something like it in the medbay corridor. But the delivery was different now. Not defensive, not deflecting, teaching. We survived with sticks, Jace said. Big difference. Var watched from the observation gantry above the storage bay. His 4 primary eyes tracked the cadets below. His 2 diagnostic ports fed data to Academy Central in real time. Attendance, engagement metrics, pheromone levels from the Kryn observer. The Verley instructor had not spoken to Jace since Dome C. He had submitted his recommendations. He had updated his forearm display, 312, frozen. He had expected the matter to close. Instead, the Academy's Board of Tactical Review had convened. A message had arrived that morning, routed through his throat scrambler with the torn paper voice of an automated clerk. Cadet Voss, J. Instructional status confirmed. Module Beta, mandatory enrollment for survival track cadets scoring below percentile 70. Instructor evaluation, pending. Pending, the word had no weight in Var's experience. He passed or failed. Cadets adapted or did not. The simulation contained them or it did not. He watched Jace demonstrate the bow belly curve. She used a branch from the Zone 9 biome carried up in a cargo crate. She showed how to test flexibility, how to find the grain, how to carve with the wood instead of against it. Her wounded hand moved with the stiffness of the mesh, but the motion was clean. Practiced. Old. A cadet Myrex did not recognize. A tall, thin species with bioluminescent throat markings raised a hand. What if the branch is wrong? Then you find another branch, Jace said. The bow chooses the archer, not the other way around. Var's diagnostic ports pulsed. The phrase was the same one she had used in the archive with Myrex, the same one her grandfather had used before the uplift. It was not academy doctrine. It was not tactical theory. It was something older, something that predated the ITA's hollowed asteroid by millennia. He filed the observation. He did not know what to do with it. The evaluation came 3 days later. Myrex received the orders at his diagnostic station. The Board of Tactical Review wanted a live demonstration, not a classroom lecture, a field trial. Jace would instruct a cadet through the full construction and deployment cycle under observation with measurable outcomes. The cadet selected was Kes. Myrex smelled the fear pheromones before he saw her. Kes stood in the corridor outside Zone 9, the third bow still clutched in her 3-fingered grip. Her lateral eyes blinked in rapid sequence. I failed the stone bolter, she said to Myrex, though he had not asked. I failed the Raptor 7. I am the evaluation subject because I am the worst. Myrex's antennae flared. He pulled her chemical signature, acrid, sharp, the unmistakable profile of a predator who had learned to fear its own prey. Or, he said, because you are the one who asked. Kes's lateral eyes stopped blinking. She looked at the bow in her hands. She looked at the dome's sealed entrance, the false sun flickering beyond the atmospheric shield. She said the bow chooses the archer, Kes said. What if it does not choose me? Myrex had no answer. He keyed the dome open. Zone 9 had not changed. 1.1 G Class 4 Deathworld simulation. Wind shear unpredictable. The same toxic flora, the same predatory microfauna rustling in the canopy. The same medical drone hovering on standby, programmed to intervene only on life threat. Jace stood at the clearing's edge. She had brought no tools of her own, just the grandfather's knife tucked in her belt pouch, the handle dark with palm oil, the blade no longer than her thumb. "Find a branch," she said to Kess. "Not the straightest, the one that bends and comes back." Kess walked into the brush. Her three-fingered grip brushed against leaves, against bark, against the resin-darkened wood Jace had used herself. She pulled branches. She tested them. She discarded them. Myrex logged from his station. The diagnostic interface showed Kess's biometrics: heart rate elevated, cortisol spiking, motor control compromised by anxiety. The same profile he had seen in 36 cadets before the Raptor 7 release. The profile of someone the test would contain. Jace watched. She did not intervene. She did not point. She let Kess fail at finding, fail at testing, fail at knowing what she was looking for. 20 minutes passed, 30, the false sun climbed. Kess returned with a branch. It was too straight. The grain ran wrong. She knew it before Jace spoke. "Try again," Jace said. Kess's lateral eyes narrowed. "You are not teaching. You are waiting." "Yes." "For what?" "For you to stop looking for the branch I would choose." Kess stared. Then she walked back into the brush. This time she moved slower. Her three-fingered grip lingered on the bark. She bent a limb, released it, watched it snap back. She did this 3 times, 4, 5. She returned with a branch that curved like a question mark. Jace took it, tested the flex, nodded. "Now we carve," she said. The construction took 4 hours. Jace demonstrated each step once. Kess replicated it: the bow belly curve, the string notches, the bark fiber braids tested by snapping and watching the curl, the fletching from ridged canopy leaves, the impact glass point shaped by hand embedded into the shaft. Kess sliced her palm on the glass. She did not stop. She wrapped it in bark, the way she had seen Jace do it, and kept working. Myrex logged the blood. He logged the lack of medical request. He logged the way Kess's chemical signature shifted, fear giving way to something else, something his olfactory memory had no name for. Not confidence, not competence, something in between, the space where learning began. "Test the draw," Jace said. Kess drew back 3 inches. The string held. She drew back 6. Her shoulder trembled. She released. The string snapped forward with the sound of a finger flicked against a cheek. "Again," Jace said. Kess drew again. 7 inches. 8. Her shoulder tendon screamed. The same injury profile Jace had displayed, the same pain tolerance the Academy had no category for. She held the draw for 2 seconds. 3. She released. The arrow flew 12 meters and stuck in the grass. Kess looked at it. She looked at Jace. Her lateral eyes were wide, the pupils dilated, the bioluminescent throat markings pulsing in a pattern Myrex had never recorded. "I hit the ground," Kess said. "Yes." "I did not hit a target." "There is no target yet." Kess's three-fingered grip tightened on the bow. Then what was the point? Jace wiped her own palm against her thigh, the synthetic mesh catching the false sun. "The point is that you built something that works. The target is extra." Var arrived as the false sunset began to color the dome. He had not announced himself. He stood at the clearing's edge, 8 feet of matte black exosteel, 4 primary eyes tracking Kess's bow with the same intensity he had tracked the Raptor 7. "The evaluation requires a measurable outcome," Var said. His torn paper voice filled the clearing. "A target, a success metric." Jace looked at him. "The Academy's metric is hit or miss. My metric is build or don't build." Your metric is not the Academy's metric. No, Jay said, it's older. Var's diagnostic ports pulsed. Myrex, watching from his station, saw something shift in the Verley's posture, a micro-tremor in the exosteel, a hesitation in the optical tracking. The same hesitation Myrex had felt when the arrow struck the drone. The Raptor 7, Var said, release it. Myrex's fingers froze over his interface. Instructor, the cadet has not completed. Release it. Myrex keyed the command. The ceiling hatch opened. The matte gray drone dropped, Falcon sleek micro-thruster wings blurring. The same model, the same evasion pattern, the same statistical wall that had stood at 0% across 847 attempts. Kess's lateral eyes widened. Her bow trembled. The fear pheromone spiked so hard Myrex's antennae flared in reflex. Jay stepped forward. She did not take the bow from Kess. She did not touch it. She stood beside her, shoulder to shoulder, and spoke in a voice that carried no further than the two of them. Read the wind, Jay said. Not the drone, the wind. Kess raised the bow. Her three-fingered grip was awkward, uncertain, the same grip she had used in the corridor. The drone hovered, scanned, began its evasive pattern, zigzag, dive, vertical climb. Your shoulder knows the draw, Jace said. Let it. Kess drew back. 4 inches, 6, her shoulder screamed. The palm wound bled through the bark wrap. She did not flinch. Wait for the commit, Jace said. The drone dipped, spun, committed to its dive. Now. Kess released. The arrow hissed. It struck the drone's left micro-thruster wing, not the optic, not the kill point. The wing shattered. The drone spasmed, tumbled, crashed into the grass with a sound like a dropped cooking pot. Not a kill, a disable. The same restraint Jace had shown, taught now by example. Kess stared at the smoking wreckage. Her bow hung at her side. Her lateral eyes moved from the drone to Jace to the bow in her hands, and something in her posture changed. Not victory, not triumph, recognition. I did not hit the optic, Kess said. No, Jace said. I hit the wing. Yes. Because the wing was enough. Jace nodded. Because the wing was enough. Var stood motionless. His 4 primary eyes tracked the wreckage. His 2 diagnostic ports fed data to Academy Central, impact location, damage assessment, flight recorder analysis. Myrex watched from his station, waiting for the torn paper voice to deliver the verdict. Var said nothing. He turned. He walked to the clearing's edge. He stopped with his back to the assembly, 8 feet of exosteel facing the toxic ridgeline, and stood there for 11 seconds. Then he spoke, not to the cadets, not to Jace, but to the dome itself, to the false sunset, to the statistical wall that had finally cracked. Separate protocols, Var said. For all human cadets, effective immediately. The prohibition of regression is suspended. He turned back. His 4 primary eyes found Jace. You are not teaching them to survive. You are teaching them that survival is not the point. Jace wiped her palm against her thigh. Then what is the point? Var's diagnostic ports pulsed amber. That, he said, is what the Academy must now learn. Myrex filed the report that night. The header read, Evaluation Beta 223, Supplemental Observation, Final. He typed for 2 hours. He deleted half of it. He typed again. The line that remained was this. She was holding back, not from the drone, from us. The weapon she built was a demonstration. The restraint was the lesson. The Academy has no category for a teacher who builds weapons to show they do not need them. He saved the file. He sent it to Academy Central. He did not know if it would be read. The Academy's response arrived 7 days later. Myrex read it from his quarters, antennae flat with the stillness of someone who had learned to expect disappointment. The message was not from Academy Central. It was from the Board of Tactical Review, rooted through Var's throat scrambler with the torn paper voice of an automated clerk. Cadet Voss J instructional status confirmed permanent. Module Beta expanded to all survival track cadets. Species requirement mandatory for all Class 4 and below assignments. Instructor Varketh reassigned to Advanced Tech Integration track, effective immediately. Myrex read it twice. He read it a third time. Var reassigned. The instructor who had failed 312 species, who had written the prohibition of regression, who had believed the test contained her, removed from the track he had defined. He filed the notice. He added a line to his supplemental log. Institutional correction precedes institutional understanding. The Academy moves the pieces before it knows why. Var found Jace in the memorial wing. She stood before the glass case, the same position Myrex had found her in days before. The arrow under microfilament suspension. The knife beside it, handle dark with palm oil, blade no longer than a thumb. The plaque, made in a day. The Verley's 8-foot frame cast a shadow across the case. His exosteel did not click or shift. He stood motionless, 4 primary eyes tracking the primitive tools surrounded by decades of war trophies and relics. "I am being moved," Var said. His torn paper voice was quieter than Myrex had ever heard it, not softer, just smaller. "I heard," Jace said. "You did not ask for this." "No." Var's diagnostic ports pulsed. "The board believes I cannot evaluate what I do not understand. They are correct." Jace turned from the case. Her palm was free of the synthetic mesh now, the scar across the knuckles visible, the 4-centimeter line of the glass cut still pink and new. She flexed her fingers. The motion was clean, old. "You understood enough," she said. "You saw the hit, you saw the restraint." "I saw the result. I did not see the method." "The method is patience." Var was quiet for 11 seconds. The same duration he had stood with his back to the clearing in Zone 9. Myrex, watching from the corridor intersection, counted them. He had learned to count Var's silences. "The Academy," Var said, "has added a new classification. Human threat profile, elevated in low-tech, no-tech, and tech-degraded environments. Separate protocols, separate evaluation metrics. The old categories no longer apply." Jace nodded, something like that. "It is not a compliment," Var said. "It is a warning. The galaxy does not know what to do with a species that builds weapons to teach." "Then the galaxy will learn," Jace said, "or it won't." She turned back to the case. Her fingers found the glass, not touching, just resting nearby. The same gesture Myrex had seen before, the same patience. Var watched her for 3 seconds. Then he turned and walked away, his 8-foot frame moving with the inevitability of a weather front that had finally broken. Kes came to Jace's quarters that evening. She carried the 3rd bow, the one from the wall mount, the one she had used to disable the Raptor 7. She held it out with both hands, 3-fingered grip awkward, uncertain. "I cannot keep it," Kes said. "Why not?" "Because it is yours. Because the bow chooses the archer, because I am not the archer yet." Jace took the bow. She tested the flex. The wood had settled into Kess's grip, shaped by her draw, her shoulder, her particular pain. It would never feel the same in Jace's hands. "Then build another," Jace said. "I tried yesterday. I found a branch. I carved. It snapped." "Then find another branch." Kess's lateral eyes narrowed. "You are not listening. I failed." "I heard you," Jace said. "I also heard you say you tried. The branch snapped. You did not." Kess stared. Her bioluminescent throat markings pulsed in the pattern Myrex had recorded, the one between fear and something else. "The Academy," Kess said, "has posted my evaluation. I passed. I am no longer the worst. I am enrolled in advanced manual survival, because of you. Because of the bow. Because of what you did not do." Kess's voice dropped. the rapid staccato of her native clicking slowing to something almost human. You did not take the shot for me. You did not build the bow for me. You stood beside me and let me fail until I did not. Jace was quiet. She set the third bow on the wall mount. She turned to the viewport, where Kethros Prime's gas giant storms spun in bands of muted color. That's the lesson, Jace said. Not the bow, not the arrow. The space between failure and the next try. Kess stood in the doorway for 5 seconds. Then she nodded once and left. Her footsteps clicked down the corridor, fading, the sound of someone who had learned to walk differently. Myrex filed his final report the next morning. He sat at his diagnostic station, the Zone 9 dome dark beyond the viewport, the false sun extinguished. He pulled up every log he had kept, the preliminary notes, the upgraded observations, the supplemental log, the black box analysis, the evaluation report. He deleted most of it. What remained was 3 paragraphs. He read them aloud to himself, antennae flaring at the sound of his own voice, testing the words for weight. Cadet Voss J. Human Earth Origin Class 12 Habitat. Competence Origin, Non-Institutional Generational Transmission. Method, Demonstration through Restraint. Outcome, Institutional Doctrine revised, Instructor reassigned, New Classification established. Note, Subject does not perform dominance. Subject performs competence. The Academy has no defense against this. He paused. He added one more line. She was holding back, from the first branch to the final wing. The cage was never the test. The cage was our assumption that she needed one. He saved the file, he sent it, he closed the interface. The Academy archive updated 3 days later. Myrex stood before the glass case alone. The arrow and knife remained, but the plaque had changed. Beneath "Made in a Day," a new line had been added in smaller text. Fabrication instrument, organic Earth origin, used in construction of tactical disablement device. Instructor, Voss J. Cadet Instructional Adjunct Permanent. He read it twice. The knife was no longer just a grandfather's tool. It was a labeled instrument in the galaxy's premier military archive. The bow was no longer just wood and bark. It was a teaching device that had rewritten Academy doctrine. The transformation was complete. The Echo object had changed meaning. Jace's new assignment Q arrived that afternoon. She read it in her quarters, the narrow cot, the wall mount with its bow. The screen glowed blue. Course Gamma, Advanced Primitive Survival Systems, Lead Instructor approved. She did not celebrate, she did not call anyone. She reached for the wall mount, lifted the bow, and tested the draw. Her shoulder tendon ached. The palm scar pulled. She held the draw for 3 seconds, 4. She released. The string snapped with a sound like a finger flicked against a cheek. She set the bow back on the mount. She picked up her grandfather's knife, her own, the one from her belt, not the one in the archive, and tucked it into its leather loop. She walked to the door. Myrex met her in the corridor. Lead instructor, he said. Gamma, the Academy has never had one. Jace shrugged, something like that. They are afraid of you, Myrex said. The words came out before he could stop them. Not of the bow, not of the arrow, of what you represent. A species that survived with sticks, that learned to teach with them, that does not need the Academy's technology to be dangerous. Jace looked at him. Her gray-green eyes were tired, the color of shallow water over stone. She had not slept well. The shoulder ached. The palm scar itched. We survived with sticks, she said. Big difference. She walked past him, close enough that his olfactory antennae caught her scent. Wood smoke, bark resin, the mineral tang of recycled air. No pheromone spike. No chemical tell. Just the smell of someone who was heading to lunch or to her next class or to find another branch that bent and came back. Myrex watched her go. His carapace hummed with the low-frequency anxiety that had become something else. Not fear, not awe, the space between them. He turned back to the archive case, the arrow under glass, the knife beside it, the plaque with its dry designation. He stood there for a long time. Then he reached into his belt pouch and pulled out his own tool, a diagnostic stylus, standard issue, nothing special. He turned it in his fingers. He thought about what it could build if he learned to use it differently. The Academy's lights hummed. The station orbited Kethros Prime, the gas giant storms visible through the viewport as bands of muted color. Somewhere in the hollowed asteroid, a class of cadets was learning to find branches that bent and came back. Myrex tucked the stylus back into his pouch. He walked toward the training bays. He did not know what he would build, but for the first time since Zone 9 he was not logging, he was trying.